Welcome once again to my class today. In our previous series, we've been looking at the averages, that's the measure of location, otherwise known as the measure of central tendency. And in all of that, we have looked at the arithmetic mean, the harmonic mean, the geometric mean, the median, and of course the mode. So we are done with that series. So our series today is under what is called the measures of dispersion. So the measures of dispersion simply helps us to get the extent or the degree of the spread of observations around or about the mean. Remember, the mean simply helps us to get a single value that summarizes or condenses a set of observation. However, the measures, irrespective of the one you're using, helps us to get the degree of the extent of deviation of each of these observations from the central value, that's the average. Okay, so just like we have several measures of central tendency, we also have different measures of dispersion. We have the range, we have the total deviation, we have the mean deviation, and we have the standard deviation. Okay, so we are going to be beginning with the range. Okay, so in our subsequent videos, we'll be looking at the other measures. So let's start with the range. So among all of the measures of dispersion that we're going to be looking at, the range happens to be the most common of them all and the most easiest one to calculate. What does it entail? It is simply the difference between the highest value and the lowest value of a set of observations. Okay, so if you have single, maybe observations x1, x2, up to xn, and you want to get the range, all you have to do is to say xn minus x1. That gives you the range. However, when you have a continuous frequency distribution, or otherwise known as the grouped frequency distribution, like the illustration we have here on the board, how do you get the range? So all you need to do here is to try two things out. One of the things you will do is to get the highest, the upper limit of the highest class. The highest class is this, the upper limit is this. Okay, so the range is, like I said, is the simplest of all the measures of dispersion. So the range in this kind of a data, that is a continuous frequency distribution or a grouped frequency distribution, is simply going to be the difference between the upper limit of the highest class. The highest class is this, the upper limit is this, okay, that is 80 minus the lower limit of the lowest class. So the lowest class is 0 to 10 and the lower limit is a 0. So clearly, our range here is 80. Another thing we can do is to take the midpoint. Okay, we'll say this plus this divided by 2. You subtract it from this plus this divided by 2. So if we decide to go this route, we will simply have our range for this kind of a vector to be equal to this plus this is 150, okay, divided by 2 minus this plus this is still 10, okay, divided by 2. So over here, we will have 75 minus 10, and then we'll have our range, in this case, to be is 65. Okay, so whichever one you decide to use gives you a description of the range. So this is it for our introductory class today on measures of dispersion. In our next series, we are going to be looking at the quartile deviation, and then subsequently we look at the mean deviation as well as the standard deviation. Now take note, the range, as one of the examples of the measures of dispersion, like I've said, is that it's very common. It is the most common and the easiest to understand and calculate. However, it has disadvantages. One of the disadvantages is the fact that it is based on just two observations out of the set of observations you want to calculate. Okay, so as such, it is not usually a good measure. Okay, it is not a good representation or interpretation of the dispersion of the data you're trying to describe. Another disadvantage is the fact that the range cannot be used when we have open ends interval. The range cannot be used to calculate the dispersion. And the last disadvantage is that it is affected by sampling fluctuations. That is, the range, as one of the measures of dispersion, will tend to change as the sample changes. So I hope you learned something in the class today. I'll see you guys in my next class. Do not forget to like, to follow my page, to make your comments, and see you on the next video. Bye bye.